Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Sunday, July 6th, 2025 is the day. Something happened when this big, beautiful bill was passed. It's not just the bill itself and not the legislation, but it is the willingness of the American people. And this is both the left and the right, and the Democrats and Republicans, and the people who are apathetic. People don't care about their country. And I'm not a big political person, and I don't believe in democracy or any of these things. But lots of people do. And, it's going to be the 250th anniversary of 1776, July 4th next year. Trump's planning a wrestling match at that time, which I covered in my last video, right? And, people don't know what it is to live under tyranny. And we're going to have tyranny again. It might not be the same as a king and a queen and these kind of things and things we've seen in the past, or maybe even religious theocracy. But make no mistake about it, it's already here, because democracy is not in effect. On a local level, maybe to some extent. Local politicians and local things. And it appears you still have the freedoms that democracy allegedly provides. But democracy has never totally been here, because the reality of the reason democracy is born to fail is that there are people who are just more qualified to lead, right? There is levels of human evolution, like you can see it all over the place, right? There are people who are, gifted at doing labor, manual labor. They can do work. They can outwork you, even if you're in physical great shape. You're an athlete. These people's ability to work day in day out, doing tireless, crappy jobs, is just evident. And I've seen this in my own life. I've worked. I pick tobacco and these other things, and when people who are educated and have more maybe the ability for abstract thought and these other things are not capable of doing that work. Doing the work that's relegated to people who are fit. That's that it fits them, right? Suits them. And then there are people who are able to run businesses and are very financially oriented. Again, like lawyers and people who are able to we don't need those people in various social situations, right? In various cultures and systems, economic systems, but this system, there's a need for that. People who can read legalese and understand things. And then there's just people who are better at math and science, and they can understand things that you can't, and you talk to them and they try to explain stuff to you, and you just can't get it, right? So there's these various types of people with different abilities, and they, and when you meet somebody who's really at the top of their game, at the top of their their line of work and their, what they can contribute to society. And they're a genius in that area, and they're just so much beyond anything that you can do, right? Like anything where it's the best of that particular art or that particular work or that thing, there's, you see people. And then there are people who are gifted at being leaders and, caring people and, people who want to make other people happy and, want to preserve things, and more thoughtful people, more emotionally balanced people, right? Who don't get swayed one way or emotionally. I mean, they can have emotions, but they're not, they don't get sucked into some emotional drama, bullshit story, victim consciousness stuff. They just make good decisions, good leadership decisions. They have some sense of seeing the future. And of course, we don't have leaders like that now. So people like that are allowed to be a part of the decision-making process, right? And then there are people who are spiritual, and then that's a whole spectrum of spiritual evolution, people who want to really connect to God. And then they can actually guide the leaders and then also work on a divine level to make sure a society is going in the right direction. They are connecting to divinity. They see the ebbs and flows of the society, and they guide people without really caring much about the material stuff. They just make sure that people stay on a godly path and that evil doesn't descend down into the system, right? You could have this on a tribal situation. You can have these different tiers of people, and recognizing that there's this is, well, people would confuse this with a caste system, which is based in your genetics, based on who you are born, who your parents are, and that doesn't, work. What I'm talking about is spiritual identification and people finding their God-given place in society. And that does not exist in our society at all because of just how this society works. And, it's about money power, where people who can accumulate wealth or have generational wealth have an overwhelming say in the way society goes. And, what we've seen here is with a big, beautiful bill, and there's a video, I haven't seen it yet, from this guy, Samir Kanish, from yesterday, about how there's a 2-tier caste system now, which without watching the video, I agree that that's probably what's happened here. And so, what you have is people who don't really value their freedoms and democracy. And our freedoms are just, the freedom to be a consumer. It's not really a free society. Like, it's not what people think it is. Because there are a lot of things that are natural and, like you have to make money. Like, you have to make money. You have to find a way to be a part of the financial system to where you can survive, right? Like, you have to get a job. And most jobs don't suit the people that do them, and a lot of jobs are, bullshit jobs, whatever it is, right? Shit jobs or bullshit jobs. Things that are unnecessary, and, then you're selling your time for money. You're selling your spiritual time that you should be putting into your spiritual evolution and developing as a person into making money, right? And these, there's an emptiness and hollowness that goes along with that. But, what we've seen here is that people don't care and have walked right back into a theocracy and a cult and a martial law type of dystopian monarchy of sorts, right? And so what Trump has done is shift the balance of power. And what he's brought back in is similar to this idea of Reaganomics, where you give all the money to the people at the top and it trickle down economics. You give the money to the people at the top, and these people want, people who are ultra wealthy are constantly trying to get this thing done. And we know that the people at the top are cheap as fuck. They are hoarders, and they like to have as much, they want to amass more and more wealth and have more and more slave labor. And they want to pay people less and less to do the jobs they need to maintain their empires. And you have people who are, they each have their own little kingdom. Like Elon Musk has his own little kingdom of multiple companies and multiple employees and all these other people like that, right? Jeff Bezos. And so they're all lords of some, way or another. And they treat their employees like shit. Like both Tesla and Amazon, especially Amazon, is known for treating their employees like shit. Trump treated his employees like shit, and his contractors. He would sign a deal with a contractor, a local vendor. And I told you that I've talked about this before. This barber who was in Vegas, just barbers know everything about this kind of gossip and shit. And he said he knew multiple vendors who the Trump empire, the Trump tower in Vegas stiffed. Trump's policies is to sign a deal with a vendor and not pay them, and then renegotiate the deal because the vendor doesn't have the legal resources that Trump empire had, right? The Trump brand had. And so he's a piece of shit, right? He's Chris Christie, who knows Trump as well as anybody, said he's the cheapest guy. Never pays for dinner, never does, any of these things. And so, even he's the richest guy at the table and he won't pay. Like he thinks and this is before, the presidency stuff. And so the guy's cheap and he treats his employees like shit. And so money doesn't trickle back down. And so there's going to be a massive wealth movement from the poor to the rich. The middle class will disappear and you'll have this dystopian society. And people are walking right into it because they don't care. Again, not that America was great and not, the other part about this is everything changes, right? I was just looking it up. I lived in New Mexico, and they found all these sea fossils in New Mexico desert, various places. Some of the lowlands. There's mountains there. There's an ocean there. The Pacific Ocean used to be there. So, there's areas where there used to be oceans that are now, dry land or just whatever it might be. During the Ice Age, Florida, there's a land bridge from Florida all the way down to South America, and there's these continents that are there, and people have to migrate to the center of the earth where it's warmer. You have these different things, and things are constantly changing, right? Even in terms of your environment. Like there's, people want grass, but plains, the grasslands eventually become forest, right? The grass, the forest burns down, and then grass and shrubs emerge, and then eventually trees, and it's a forest again. There's these cycles. And we want to maintain things. This is why we had the Dust Bowl, farmland, things are, we want to, we come across this lush soil and we grow monoculture, corn and shit like that, crops. And it depletes the soil, and then the fucking, all these things, we use up all the water and the aquifers. And trying to get consistency. I talked about how people in Utah and Arizona and Nevada have these little patches of grass because they come from the East Coast, and they have a little bit of a lawn, and it sucks up like all this, this aquifer water, all this water that should be going to other things. And, things change. Like things can't stay the same. You want to have these consistent places to live, and this consistency in the economy and consistency in everything. People want the same things day in and day out. What you have in the store and all these things. The same produce. Like when you're there and you're like, oh, they don't have the things that I usually get. And, we just don't, we take it for granted. We have no idea what it takes to load these grocery stores all across America with produce and other things, foods from other countries, resources and things, and a rigged system so that we can have this consistency in our climate, consistency. We can set our temperature to a certain temperature and keep it there, within a couple degrees one way or another. All the things that we have, and none of those things are sustainable. It's just not how life works. You have ups and downs in your life. You have times of deprivation, maybe times of abundance, but you can't keep that stuff forever. You just can't. And, we now have a situation where things are reversing themselves, and, the middle class will disappear, the American lifestyle will disappear. And all these people who thought Trump was on their side, and he told you from the very fucking beginning, when he ran for president and before then, he was about himself, and he was not a person that cared about other people. He doesn't give a shit about your America and your American dream. He cares about himself and the people like him. Those are his people, the elite, and he has just fucked you guys, fucked all the Trumpers, and they don't even know it yet. I mean, some of the Trumpers who are richer, sure, the people who will, ride the wave of they'll be on the top end of this thing, but everyone else will be fucked, and the system is, and not that Trump is the only catalyst. He's the catalyst, but he's not the root cause of this. This is, this the way it was going to go. It always goes this way. America, whatever America was, when he talks about America being great again, that time when there was, people were growing and economically and educationally, and people would come from foreign countries for the land of opportunity. It's a short-lived thing. It's not something that's sustainable, and now it's over. Like it's been legislated out of existence, but it was already folding, and people don't care. The young people don't care as long as they have their screens and their time on the internet and whatever other little things that they exist for. And now with AI and all this stuff and robots, like all that stuff there's gonna be a lack of, there won't be a need for certain levels of people. Like I said, the laborers and the people at the bottom of the pyramid of the economic pyramid that's printed on the back of the dollar, which shows you that there was never a democracy in the first place, because the pyramid represents human beings and their levels, and there's a capstone that floats above everybody else. And so that's where we are right now, and people just don't know it yet. It hasn't hit them. It hasn't hit us yet. But when people start realizing that their life is no longer, their lifestyle is no longer available in one way or another, and then they start complaining, it's like you've already lost the battle years and years ago. And when they went to a debt-based economic system in the 1920s, and all the things that have happened since then. Anyways, let's get into some of the stuff here. So here,
Creeping autocracy doesn't just roll onto Main Street with tanks, though under President Donald Trump, one might argue we're closer to that sort of thing than we'd like to admit. More often, autocracy starts with a list, a government list, then more lists, then bigger lists. And the names on those lists begin to face the full force of the state with blatant disregard for the rule of law and for basic constitutional rights. If you followed our coverage, you know the warning. Autocrats don't go after the average person, at least not at first. They start with people they can more easily target. And before long, the dragnet enlarges. And right now here in America, that government dragnet is enlarging again. This week, the Justice Department quietly posted a memo dated June 11th. In it, Assistant Attorney General Brett Shumate gives U.S. attorneys sweeping discretion to strip nationalized Americans of their citizenship in order to, quote, advance the administration's policy objectives, end quote.
that's very fucked. They could strip your citizenship.
As Trump escalates his immigration crackdown. Prosecutors are told to focus on national security threats, but the memo also makes clear they can target, quote, any other cases referred to the civil division that the division determines to be sufficiently important to pursue, end quote. Translation, basically anyone Trump and his allies decide they want to target. As immigration attorney Rosanna Berardi tells ABC
Well,
News,
he had already said that he's considering deporting Elon Musk. There's that other guy in New York. We'll get into that in a bit. So this has already happened. This is where Trump is saying, oh, you disagree with me, I'll deport you. Because, we live in Trump land now, right? America first is Trump first. I talked about the narcissism. And so the more important piece to this is, Trump is like Joe Biden. Joe Biden was clueless and had Parkinson's and, was mentally deficient. And they ran their shit through Joe Biden. Trump doesn't care. Trump is bored by government. And so he's like the king who is watching his kingdom burn, and everyone's coming, king, what are you going to do about it, right? I mean, that's the way Trump would say it. They come up to me and they go, king, sir, king, what do you, when he talks about these conversations he has, right? And, he would just say, this is the let him eat cake kind of thing, Marie Antoinette, where he's so oblivious. He'd be watching the jesters and, whatever thing he'd be stuffing his face with bonbons, or, and just oblivious to what's going on in this kingdom, right? And then these people around him are all running their agenda. And, this for Trump is a little bit different because they're running an agenda that Trump approves of, that he likes this agenda, but, it's what he thinks should happen. And it's not, right? Again, moving all the power to the wealthy and having average people be more enslaved to the powers that be. This is the elite version of their dream of what they wish could happen. But what inevitably happens is the people rise up, and that's why, Trump will go after your guns, and you'll be like, oh, it's Trump, we can trust him, and whatever it might be. But these things are going to have to happen. Trump is ill-suited to deal with any of these things because he doesn't care. Like he's just oblivious to 90% of his job. Like he doesn't think it's his responsibility or doesn't even know about it or can't do it.
Quote, the memo clearly signals that DOJ is going to pursue more of these cases, and not just against terrorists or war criminals, even cases involving undisclosed criminal records or procedural errors during naturalization are on the radar. In the past 28 years of my practice, the government has generally left naturalized U.S. citizens alone. This is a departure from that mentality, end quote. The target is no longer just children born here to undocumented parents. It's naturalized American citizens themselves. According to 2023 data from the Migration Policy
Okay, so anyways, this is the 2 tiers of citizenship. Now, I thought this was going to be about the economic aspect of this, which has also happened with the Big Beautiful Bill. Like, this is something totally different. This is to do with immigrants. And the reality is, we need immigrant labor unless you have some robot army coming in. Robots that can do this kind of labor. But in terms of the economy, you're going to have the haves and the have-nots. And if you don't make it into the haves, and being in a part of the haves is going to suck. like some kind of eyes wide shut Hunger Games kind of thing. And so you'll either be with these demented freaks, or you'll have nothing. And this is how all these societies end up. This is what I was talking about in the beginning about the flow of change and all the rest of it. So, they're setting this up so there'll be, the people with money and the people without, and it'll be a smaller group of people with money, and then, the depopulation is going to have to be a part of that. They're going to be massive depopulation, and you'd have a desperate, whatever it is. And so, the issue here for them is that that's not God's will. There isn't some God's will that the people at the top are the most fucked, the most out of whack with their connection to the divinity within them, the most atheistic, the most anti-God. Those people can't continue to rule. Like when there's going to be a paradigm shift, that's the first thing that has to go, the ruling class. The ruling class has to be erased, eradicated, and the whole, everything with them, all their ideas, all their scams, all their bullshit things that they do. Like it can't be that they get taken out and then a new group of people ends up being the same as them, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. So, those are things that have to happen for a paradigm shift.
Welcome back. President Trump is spending the weekend at his New Jersey golf club, the day after signing his massive tax and spending bill into law. And his former right-hand man, Elon Musk, is launching the new political party. NBC's Miche Alcindor is traveling with the president and has more.
Tonight, on the heels of President Trump signing his massive domestic policy bill into law, his former close ally, Elon Musk, announcing the formation of a new political party. Musk, the world's richest person, taking to his social media site X to...
By a factor of 2 to 1, you want new political party and you shall have it. When it comes to going bankrupting our country with waste and graft, we live in a one-party system, not a democracy. Today, America's party is formed to give you back your freedom. No, it's always been a one-party system. Like he's, this guy's a piece of shit too that wants to chip everybody. So, and he's got the fucking satellites that are creating all the electromagnetic pollution. I mean, just all of it. Which seems like a good thing, but it doesn't work very well. And then there's the other aspect of it. And so, he's going to do this, and we'll see what happens. But in reality, like he has money, and maybe but he has to find other people, and then there has to be people that gravitate to this, and it's not really a solution because we all know, everybody in the truth community knows that, the bigger part of this issue is the system isn't supposed to be saved. Like there's a time that something's supposed to die, and that was like in 1980 when the system should have collapsed then. And there's been multiple times since then it's been kept alive for whatever reason. But it's, there's a time where something just runs its course. And, the system's going to keep on going until it doesn't, and then people are going to be like, well, what do we do now, right? And that's where, Pockets of the Future is the idea behind Pockets of the Future. But, that would involve that people would be figuring that out and starting to prepare for what's going to happen. And for the most part, people aren't going to do that. Most people have just relegated the end of their existence. If the system goes down, they're going to go down with it. Like that's just how most people feel about it. And when you get older, it's harder to change. And when you're younger, you don't give a shit. So, that's where we're all at.
What we're seeing is simply staggering. Right now, rescue crews are still trying to find people who are missing, including 27 girls from a summer camp overrun by floodwaters.
Remember, there's a guy saying he was hoping that they climbed a tree.
Just a short distance from where we are right now. It's actually right behind me, Camp Mystic. It's been over 48 hours since floods began ravaging this community. The Guadalupe River, which we're right next to, you may be hearing it.
I went through a flood in Chennai, India, and it's pretty fucked. When water is where it's not supposed to be. And it just stays there for like a day or two, and you're just like, oh, well, this is not. Because they opened up the floodgates at a dam in a city of 26 million people. 4/5 of it were underwater. In some places where, people were. I mean, there's an ashram across the street, the ashram that I was there to be at. I was at a flat across the street, and the flat was, we had about 3.5 foot of water, but there were parts of the ashram that were 25 feet underwater. I mean, crazy shit, right? And people didn't know about this, and all these people lived by the river. They weren't warned, and then it would happen in the middle, like it happened at 5 in the morning. They opened the fucking floodgates and didn't tell anybody, and it killed, I would assume it's thousands of people, and washed out their homes and huts, and now that river area they're developing as a modern sort of call center area, the riverfront property. But it's surreal when it's just everything's just like, everything that used to be above water is now underwater.
Overflowing with multiple months of rain in just a matter of hours, reaching upwards of nearly 24 feet. The devastation, what we're seeing on the ground, is just awful. The all-girls camp here in Kirk County, Camp Mystic, hit a...
Anyways, it's a weird thing that's happening in the middle of July. Like that kind of flash flood is crazy. It's just not a time you associate with this kind of rains. I'm not sure what Texas is not a place that I associate with. They have these desert rains, but they usually take place in the spring. Like these deserts get, it just rains for like a rainy season in the spring. Some of these big deserts out there, and then it just dries up. But there's some puddles and pools of water, and like there's these frogs that lay eggs that come out of. There's these frogs that live underground for like 10 years waiting for these times of flood-like conditions, and they come out and they just they have like a week above ground and they mate and they lay eggs, and there's a race between the time that these puddles dry up and the tadpoles evolve enough that they can make it out of the pools and start living on the bury themselves in the ground. I mean, just all these things that lives in the desert. But you'll see this desert bloom, where all these flowers, all these things that just sit there dormant, maybe 10 years, and then the seeds are, activated by some torrential rainfall and things like this. But nothing like what we're seeing here, and not in the middle of the summer when it's counterintuitive to have this kind of rain in the hottest part of the year. But it's happening, so, like these are like, apocalyptic signs of the apocalypse.
Oh, very well. We always have gotten along well. You're going to have to say that again because you're being blurred out.
The Iran wants to have the UN force the U.S. to pay for the damages that were done. Why?
She's saying that the Iran wants the UN to force the U.S. to pay for damages done by those bombs.
By the strike.
The obliteration.
That the U.S. did.
I think it's pretty ridiculous, yeah.
It's pretty ridiculous that we'd have to pay for that kind of fucking unprovoked attack on a sovereign country after we fucked them over so many years ago. I mean, a massive way. Like, that's what pricks like this think, right? People aren't, they're just to be, like they're there to serve him. This guy. Trump thinks people are there to serve him. Like, people are here to that's what he seeks other people. There are people who are on his level, and then everyone else is there to serve these people. That's how they think about themselves. Whether they're kings or popes or, they rise up to a higher level and they think that everyone else exists to manifest their greatness. And, these countries are there. They're not real people. They're not whatever. America first, fuck everybody else, me first. And that kind of narcissism will fuck over your whole, your whole existence as a person and future existences and then your country. Like America is, when we're that selfish that America first is, the war cry, and people are all like, yeah, America first. That's how selfish everyone is, right? Not realizing that, like what makes you better than other people? Like, what makes you better than Iranians? What makes you better than the Russians? What makes you better than the Chinese? Why do you deserve things that they don't deserve? We're USA, that's why. We're number one, that's why. This kind of bullshit. Like what? You're a lazy piece of shit that, that doesn't non-contributing motherfucker, and you think that you're somehow more entitled to. I mean, not, I don't mean just Trump. I mean everybody. You think you're more entitled to whatever kind of lifestyle that other people don't get in other countries, just because you were lucky enough materially, not spiritually, because this is a spiritually deprived place, but you were lucky enough to be born here.
Are there plans for partners with Ukraine on conditions?
Well, we've been helping them and we'll continue to help them. It's a pretty tough situation. We'll see what happens. I told you I was very unhappy with my call with President Putin. And it just seems like he wants to go all the way and just keep killing people. No good.
So, wait a minute. You're not going to blame Joe Biden here, are you?
It's not good. I wasn't happy with it.
Mr. President, are there any updates on the negotiations of the TikTok deal?
Yeah, we pretty much have a deal. Now we're going to go and ask. I think we're going to start Monday or Tuesday asking, talking to China, perhaps.
Okay, TikTok deal. Remember the TikTok bullshit that was happening. You know, Putin, he said, is going to go all the way and just go take over the Ukraine because Trump just bombed Iran. Like, it's just like anything goes, right? You know, like this is what happens when you open up this kind of foreign policy. Like, how can you tell Russia they can't do the same, right? And then, you know, he's going to talk about economic sanctions here.
Okay.
Mr. President, have you threatened Putin with sanctions?
Have you threatened Putin with sanctions?
University.
We talk about sanctions a lot, yeah.
What does he say?
I would say he's not thrilled with it, but, you know, he's been able to handle sanctions, but these are pretty biting sanctions. Now, we talk about sanctions.
Sanctions make kids starve, so they're not fucking nothing. But they're, according to Tucker Carlson, Russia's hooked up with China with, you know, they have lots of food and other things, so they can bypass the sanctions that way.
A lot. And he understands that it may be coming, and, you know, he's a professional.
It may be coming.
Yeah, maybe coming, sure.
Have you decided on what your next international trip might be?
With who? With what?
Have you decided on what your next international trip might be?
Yeah, you know, it changes a lot. We get these emergencies. I'm putting out fires all over the place. Talking about
He's putting out fires all over the place. That's the guy. He's just a problem solver. He's just like, he just walks in and the whole world, like he walks down the street and flowers bloom and birds sing. He's just this natural healer. He's healing the earth with his "Make America Great Again" and his fucking his presidential numbers up there and his fucking me first agenda, Trump first agenda.
And we continue to follow breaking news out of Central Texas. At this hour, a desperate search and rescue effort continues for
And that's Fox right there, that whole road.
dozens of people missing after floodwaters inundated an area north of San Antonio. Among the missing, 27 young.
This is early on in the flood, but I just want to show you that one image there. You know, like this will be forgotten. Like next week, we won't remember this. There might be a story about whatever they find the corpses or whatever it is. But, you know, I mean, there's the pictures of some of the kids, you know, just brutal stuff. And, you know, this is just the new reality. Like, things are going south quickly. And then, you know, when it hits you, right? You know, some of the roads that I travel on, you know, that some of the highways that I occasionally travel on, it's costing billions of dollars to fix those highways. Just one highway area in some of these places that got hit by the hurricane. There's probably, you know, I don't know. I could just ask let me ask the ChatGPT. It could cost as much as $120 billion with $60 trillion already, or just for North Carolina. So, you know, it's going to be, did I say trillion? $billion, whatever. 120 billion dollars from that one hurricane. I mean, this is where, you know, like America is falling apart, and then there's things like that happening. And it'll probably cost, you know, $20 billion to $10 billion. I don't know. It depends on how many roads are washed out and what, you know, infrastructure. But even $5 billion in this thing in Texas, and it's just something, you know, forest fires and things, all the stuff in California, right? Like America doesn't, we're broke as fuck, and we got these. You know, it's like you're really suffering financially, and then your roof goes in your house, and you fix that, and then there's an electrical fire, and then, you know, all these things, right? And you're already, you know, maxed out on your credit. And then this happened.
A couple weeks ago, you said that
that you were on the cusp of a historic settlement with Harvard University. What's changed since then? Do you think you're closer to an agreement, or do you think Columbia could go first?
I think we're going to probably settle with Harvard. We're going to probably settle with Columbia. They want to settle very badly.
How much?
There's no rush. A lot of money.
President, I wanted to ask you about one of the words you used during your speech, Shylocks. That's widely viewed as an anti-Semitic phrase. Do you intend for that word to be used?
No, I've never heard it that way. To me, it's
He said Shylock, which is a derogatory term towards Jewish lawyers.
no, I've never heard it that way. To me, Shylock is somebody that's a money lender at high rates. I've never heard it that way. You view it differently than me.
No, you're wrong about it because it's considered a fucking racial slur by people who live in New York, and you lived in New York, so I don't know why the fuck you New York is probably the number one place that would use that word, and you used it, and you don't know what it means. This thing with Harvard is fucked too. Like, it's everything. Like, Trump is just a fucking disaster. It'd almost be funny, like it was in the first term, but it's just bad. Like, it's embarrassing. The guy sucks so bad. Like, he's the epitome of like the worst kind of king, like the worst kind of leader. Somebody who makes it all about himself. Somebody thinks he does great when he's doing badly. Anybody who criticizes him is the problem. And anybody who butters him up is the solution. And he, thinks that giving wealth and power to the people who are the least capable of handling it is the right way to rebuild a society and save it. It's just the worst possible fucking guy, right? So this is the guy here.
Julio Rosas, Blaze Media, sir. A couple months ago, I ran into former DHS Secretary Mayorkas, and I asked him a couple questions about his disastrous handling of the border. He didn't like my questions.
Trump is holding roundtable at Florida's alligator Alcatraz with Noem and DeSantis.
But the number one question that I heard from people in responding to my video was, why isn't he?
So this is some piece of shit YouTuber who fucking loves Trump. He's a Trump taint licker who they allow in to be pressed now because they want, which is, this is what I thought would be a good idea, but not these kind of people, right? Like people who are more balanced. And of course, no one will ever do that. People who aren't, right or left, who are on social media, who can ask real questions. But I thought this was a good idea for Trump in his first term. He should have just shut out the mainstream media because they were, goofy with them. And of course, nobody knew Trump was going to do this. Like, we thought he could, what he's doing now. And we didn't know how far he would go. Like, he's full Trump. Like, this is more than, I think the liberal media was saying things like he might do this, but didn't really believe it. Because we've never seen anything like this before, where somebody just shuts out reality and every kind of feedback loop, surrounds himself with yes men, and just goes full fucking, doofus, like just moronic stuff that he's doing. And then, this is a dystopian fucking takeover of the government. Like, he's getting rid of the, everything that stands in his way. All the checks and balances. Like, it's just completely fucked. It's a little bit funny because, this is supposed to happen. He's doing God's work on the one level. America needs to come down because it just has to. It's not, like I said, if we all prayed for America to get exactly what it deserves and each person prayed for what we deserve personally, we are, holding God hostage in ourselves. We're holding God hostage internally. I'm going to do a whole video about this. I'll talk about this maybe tomorrow, like a spiritual voiceover. But we're holding God hostage, and and our egos are holding God hostage, and we're forcing our will upon the divine, but that can't go on forever. Like isn't like we figure out how to crack the code and it's a short-lived thing. And Trump, it's this guy here. Let's
arrested yet. Obviously you guys are cleaning up the mess that was.
Anyway, so he brought these guys in, and I thought he should have done this during his first term. Bring in like more truther type people. But he's bringing in all these right-wing Trump people that should have already seen through his bullshit. And now they're replacing the journalists who'd actually ask him real questions. and I don't want to call them journalists, but like in this case they are, because Trump sucks, right? And this guy's he's asking this question in a way that supports Trump's narrative of the world, and they're bringing these people in, these fucking taint lickers.
Made deliberately for the past 4 years, and so people want accountability. It's great to see that the border is secured, and it's great to see the state level cooperation. But I guess I would ask you, why hasn't he been held accountable, or anybody really?
Well, pardons were given out by to many people, and they shouldn't have been given out. Like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs was given a pardon because they destroyed all of the information from 2 years of hearings. And they should be arrested, but they were given pardons.
That's about Trump. That has nothing to do with any of these other things. That's about Trump and his being persecuted.
Was he given a pardon, Mayorkas? Was he not?
I don't believe so.
Well, I'd take a look at that one, because what he did is it's beyond incompetence. Something had to be done. Now, with that being said, he took orders from other people, and he was really doing the orders. And you could say he was very loyal to them, because it must have been...
I thought Mayorkas was the mayor of New York, that thing. I don't know what that guy's name is. But he's talked about deporting that guy. Like he throws these things out. I might deport that guy. We might arrest this person. And yet he came out with Hillary, and he said that he would not persecute Hillary, right? Like he's very select in what he said that, during the campaign, lock her up, but then he said he could have put her in jail, but didn't. He protected her. He admitted to protecting her. And that's king-like shit, right? If I have that meme, I'll show it to you. I think I played it a number of times.
Yeah, please. I don't think it's appropriate for me to talk about it. I think it's a tragic story.
This is about pardoning Hunter Biden.
You want to know the truth. And I felt that with Hillary Clinton, too. With Hillary Clinton, I could have done things to her that would have made your head spin. I thought it was a very bad thing. Take the wife of a president of the United States and put her in jail. And then I see the way they treat me. That's the way it goes. But I was very protective of her. Nobody would understand that, but I was. I think my people understand it. They used to say, lock her up, and I'd say, just relax, please. We won the election. I think it would be I think it would have been horrible for our country and we had her between the hammering of all of the files. And don't forget, she got a subpoena from the United States Congress. And then, after getting the subpoena, she destroyed everything that she was supposed to get. I thought it was so bad to take her and put her in jail, the wife of a president of the United States. And then, when it's my turn, nobody thinks that way. I thought it was a very terrible thing. And she did a lot of very bad things. I'll tell you what, she was pretty evil. But in terms of the country and in terms of unifying the country, bringing it back, to have taken her and to have put her in jail, and I think you know the things as well as I do. There were some pretty bad acts that she did. I think it would have been very bad for our country. And a lot of my people, a lot of the MAGA, as they call them, but the base. And I think the base is 75% of the country.
You know how fucked it is the guy wears his own merch? I mean, this is his merch. And so, like he wears it. Like it's just fucked. Like all of it. Like he's all these Republicans and all these fucking pieces of shit out there that claim to be patriots and claim to be, pro-America. I'm not this way, right? This shit doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I just don't have respect for things because, they're not to be respected. Like, I don't have this stuff that's sacred. Even in my spiritual tradition, there are things that are sacred, and I understand this. And I understand the need for tradition, and I understand all these things. But for me, it just doesn't exist, right? Like, I don't have like, oh, I'm so offended kind of thing, right? I don't, when people do stuff to disrespect things. But there are things that are just evil. Like there's a difference between being disrespectful to a culture or a belief system or something, because, words are just words. They don't mean anything. But there are things that are done that are evil, where you're destroying things that are other people's belief systems and these things, right? Even as fucked as somebody's belief system is, if it's not bothering anybody, when you go to erase it like the Christians did when they went to these various cultures and they erased the cultures in Scotland and in Ireland and and all over Africa and America and these Aboriginal people, and just went in there in the Middle East, the Muslims, and tried to force their, the Crusades, and try to, these so-called missionaries that would torture and rape and murder these kids, trying to force them to forget their culture and their upbringing and their families, and force some bullshit Christian culture that's, it's remedial spirituality at best, even the best of it, and, all the rest of it, this indoctrination. And, that's just fucked, like all that stuff. And it's been done not just by the Christians, it's been done over and over again. So there's things like that. But I don't have respect for, for all these, I'm not offended by these things. But this guy is supposed to be the president, and he's just making and I like that he did this during the first term, because I don't respect the presidency. I don't respect the, I know the political process it's a sham. It's fake. They all just tell you what they want you what you want to hear, and they're not. It's not a real thing. And so when he was tweeting in the middle of the night his first term, it was funny, and it was, it just showed you that the presidency was a joke, right? Even him tweeting, what kind of way is this to run a country when he got worked on the election in 2020? But, to those people that this matters to those people who like the Constitution and like these things, and they've put this guy in office, and they're oblivious to, they've shut off, their ability to accept the fact that he's a fucking piece of shit, and he's doing stuff like wearing these fucking hats, right, pitching his own merch. And then this happened.
The idea that if some illegal immigrants escape, they just get eaten by an alligator or a snake or something?
I guess that's the concept. This is not a nice business. I guess that's the concept.
This is not a nice business. I guess the concept is that we put them out there, and if they escape, alligator, like, it's not the concept. Alligators don't eat fully grown adult people very often. Crocodiles are more prone to those kind of attacks. But, like hippos, put hippos in there. Hippos, I think, kill more. Mosquitoes kill the most people, right? Mosquitoes, with their diseases. But, in terms of attacks, I think hippos are the number one. Of course, they don't live in Florida. But, it's not that you're going to get, but he's just a fucking moron. Like, just.
Snakes are fast, but alligators we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison, how to run away.
So you're going to teach them? Like, this is not to be joked about. Like, this is like fucking feeding Christians to lions. Snakes are fast. Snakes is fast, but, alligators. And they're going to teach prisoners what to do if they escape? Right? Like, what the fuck?
Snakes are fast, but alligators we're going to teach them how to run away from an alligator, okay? If they escape prison. How to run away. Don't run in a straight line. Run like this. And you know what? Your chances go up about 1%. Okay?
Okay. He's a piece of shit. Like, just a worthless piece of shit, right? Like, and he that would be enough to tank anybody's presidency. When I grew up, if somebody said that and was talking about other human beings in such a fashion, the media and everyone else would descend on this motherfucker and get rid of him. And this is just normal for Trump to say shit like that, and everyone's just accepted it. It's just so low vibration. Some of these people are like, I don't know how many criminals they are, but there are not very many of them, right? Like, not very many people are criminals that are coming in here. They're criminals because they broke the law coming into America. But in terms of, them being gang members and all this shit that the right wing pushed, it's probably a very low percentage. And Trump doesn't give a shit. He's just arrested anybody. And then he's like, he gets complaints from some of his donors that are like farmers and restaurant workers, especially him, because he understands how to run a club, because he has them in his clubs. And he's like, yeah, we need these workers because we can't get Americans to do this fucking work. I was like, let's give them amnesty. I don't know, fuck who. Like, he's a moron this way, right? But, these are people who are, they've been yanked out of their homes and whatever. They've established here, whatever they are. And, they're sitting there and they don't know what's going on. And then he's like, well, you guys run. You better get to teach if the alligator's going to get you. Like, what the fuck is that kind of dehumanizing bullshit, right? Like, it's, people are there to serve Trump. They don't exist for their own, they don't have their own sovereign abilities to, have their own opinions and live their own lives, right? These are just an absolute piece of shit as a human being. Okay, this is one last thing here I want to show you then. Tomorrow I think I'm going to just do a voiceover, I don't know, at least a long one. And I want to talk about the thing I talked about earlier, about, imprisoning God inside of you. Your ego imprisoning God inside of you. So this is a very important concept. And then, what happens to people when they get power? And I've talked about this some Scarrick-wise. Trump has always had the power of a rich man and the power of a celebrity. But now he has the power of the president, and he's not doing well with it. And he's got victim consciousness because of, I don't think he was in on it when they were persecuting him, fake persecuting him. I think that was to rally his base, to centralize his power with his people and all these, enliven and hold in his base. And, I don't think they let him in on it. And so that triggered Trump to go all, he thinks he's been wrongly, all these things like he was saying earlier in the, this video about how, he didn't lock Hillary up, but they locked him up. Like, he thinks the rules were broken for him. And so he's gone full fuck you, full fuck you, Trump. Because they pretended that they were going after him. Which I said they never were, because why would they when he's been their best asset? And so, this shit that went down, the stuff that happened with all these things, him being so-called persecuted. And now he's, running loose, like just fucking, it's like, hey, fuck you guys, right? You think this whole thing is doing. And, some of that is situational, but it's also what you do when you get power. And you've probably seen this with someone in your life, or you've experienced this personally, where somebody gets power or celebrity. Like, a lot of people get this internet celebrity. And, I had a little bit of that, right? Where I, not much of that, but, something where I had some success. And, it changes you, and you have to guard against it, right? You have to guard against thinking that you're better than you are. And this is a really important thing. And I talked about this in a recent voiceover for my Journey series. And maybe it was here. Maybe I included it in my video yesterday. I'm not sure. What you can do about that. It's a video that's up now on Gratefullness Meditation. At least it's uploaded. I haven't made it public yet. That video, let me see. I'm going to go to that thing. Well, I won't do that now. But, talking about spiritual pitfalls and also material pitfalls. So this is Trump with power, unchecked power, at the end of his life, when he doesn't give a fuck, and, what he's willing to become as a person. And it's like demonic, right? This is how demons are made, right? Like, he is an Asuric king, a demonic king.
Welcome back. President Trump is ramping up his pressure campaign on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, urging him to cut interest rates.
It's like those eyebrows are cartooned, like drawings that are moving like independently, like they're CGI, they're AI'd in.
By a lot. The president's latest demand came in a handwritten letter held up by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at a press briefing yesterday. You see her there. Trump penned a message to Powell in Sharpie on a list of world central bank rates, writing in part, quote, "Jerome, you are, as usual, too late. You have cost the USA a fortune." The president has repeatedly attacked the Fed chair for resisting his demands to lower interest rates, recently encouraging Powell to resign and floating the idea of naming his replacement. Joining us now, senior economic reporter for Axios, Courtney Brown. So you
see, this is a big deal here, right? Weird stuff. This thing here, Caroline Leavitt. Weird stuff here. For him to paint this letter. Now, the Federal Reserve is a piece of shit organization that has been created to push a usury debt-based system. It's supposed to be independent of the government and politics and the president, but it's still a piece of shit. These central banks, which those that, lots of truthers haven't been given the proper, you have to go through these various narratives. You have to understand about the creature from Jekyll Island. There's, that's one of many books about the Federal Reserve being created. You have to know all these things that happened historically, right? The the various Bretton Woods meeting where they made America the world reserve currency, and then the creation of the petrodollar. Like, you have to understand these things. Like this, most people are too stupid and they come in late and they want to blame everything on fucking Soros. And, this is a long-standing, all the way back to the 1920s, 1930s, when we had this economy based in usury-based, promise to pay, promissory notes, instead of going off the instead of having the gold standard. It's created all the economic boom we have today, but with soul-crushing debt, and debt being used as money, which is demonic. So there's a whole thing there. And then you have to go through the religious history and understand what happened in Christianity to divert from Jesus's primary teachings. Like, these all things have to be understood. And, Trump and these guys, I mean, it's so degraded by we get to Trump, you don't understand all the history that's led to this moment. And the Federal Reserve sucks, but Trump isn't against the Federal Reserve. He wants to corrupt it even more. He wants it to bend to his will. He wants this guy to change the interest rate or do whatever he says to do, and, whether it's appropriate or not. And the guy's a fucking bonehead, Trump is. So he could crash the world economy by doing this, right? And so, not that I'm a big fan of Harvard and all these elitist schools, but Trump's attacking these traditions, and he's getting rid of anything like, that's higher intelligence or, sophisticated economic understanding or whatever it is, right? Like, as much as pieces of shit as these organizations are, Trump wants to lower vibration them, which is, completely fucked. And so, I mean, that's everything that Trump represents. Anyways, we're just waiting for this all to kick in. Like, it's been going on for a while. Pre-Trump, during Biden, years and years ago. Like, like you have in your physical system, maybe you have like some minor health issues that are the beginning of something that's terminal, right? Like, choices you're making, eating carcinogens, or just things that are happening in your body. And over time, your body's wearing out, and there's things there. And they're not necessarily terminal. I mean, they don't kill you right away, but they're going to kill you. Like, it's just happening. You're falling apart, you're dying, right? You see these people with a business, and the business has its heyday. It's something like MySpace, right? Or, I guess Facebook even now, but it's replaced MySpace. It has its heyday, it's at its peak. And then it starts to decline, and then, it doesn't go bankrupt or it doesn't cease to exist, and then at some point it just withers away and just dies, right? Like, it's, these companies or any of these things. And this is like America. We're taking incoming left and right natural disasters, or maybe, man-made disasters, or whatever it might be, political things, economic things, and just people just breaking down, people being shittier and shittier, selfish, weak and entitled, just, falling apart and doing all the things that they do that are, counterproductive. And then all of a sudden it just goes. And you're like, holy shit, where'd that come from? Well, it was a long time coming. So anyways, that's where we're at. Like, these things are hitting some people. Some people are being affected by it. Some of these are like natural disasters. Some of them are, man-made cause or a combination of them. But we're entering into a time where the end of the, and things have already changed substantially now. Like I said, in that there's that one voiceover I have on Spotify. It's the first video I uploaded. I think I included the voiceover in the Journey series, but I'm not sure if I did. But otherwise, I think it's just there. And I talk about this at length there, trying to explain, the whole thing. But anyways, let me wrap this one up here. You guys get it. We're just waiting for for it to hit. We're free falling, and we haven't hit rock bottom yet. And when we do, we'll know it. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.